Is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday, October 12th. I'm Donna Will, Professional Development Coordinator for the Developmental Disabilities Administration. We welcome you to this webinar on positive behavior supports, and today's presenter is Jennifer Jeffery Pearsall. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few things about the webinar. All participants are in listen-only mode, and everyone, I think everyone has, if they're logging in by computer, you have an option to also listen by phone. And you can go to the panel. There's the control panel picture. And you can go there and click on the phone option, and then you can, if you need to have the phone number. So we also have a handout for this webinar, and you can find it in the handout section. Actually, it's not loaded yet, but we'll get to that in just a second. And then any questions you might have, we have the question or chat part on your panel that you can just click that, open it up, and ask your questions. So now I'm going to introduce Jennifer Jeffery Pearsall. Good morning.
Excellent. Good morning. Thank you. So welcome, everyone. I'm going to get us back here to just remind us and orient us to the topic today, which is talking about positive behavior support, and more specifically, how to get involved with PBF through Maryland DDA. We're going to do some introductions in a moment. We'll circle back to some big ideas of positive behavior support that have been reviewed in the September webinar that we conducted, that you can get access to if you haven't seen, or go back to if you need to dive a little bit deeper into some of the topics that we're talking about. And then we'll spend time this morning talking about details on getting involved with organization-wide positive behavior support, and leave ample time for questions and answers after we go through some content. Just remind folks that we're talking about here a statewide partnership that is led and by the Maryland Department of Health, Developmental Disabilities Administration, and in partnership with folks at the Institute of Community Integration at the University of Minnesota, as well as Sheppard Pratt and the APBS Mid-Atlantic Network, and the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. And again, this work and the kind of the passion and drive and vision for this work is guided by the Developmental Disabilities Administration, and the partners come together to round this out and provide opportunities within Maryland, and also borrow ideas from Minnesota, a state that has been implementing positive behavior support in organizations statewide for a few years. And we had some examples from Rachel Freeman from the Institute of Community Integration in September, talking about their work in Minnesota, to just provide some additional information. So you're welcome to go back to that September webinar and hear Rachel speak about her work there. I want to do some introductions of the partners, and then as we're doing that, we have a large group, so I'd like folks to do introductions through the chat. And if you are not able to see your control panel, if you see this red arrow, microphone sign, camera sign, and I'm not sure what the white box at the bottom is, but it seems important. The big idea is that if you can't see the control panel and where to find chat, select that red arrow, and your control panel will appear or get larger. And it would be very helpful if you could, in chat, I see some folks are doing it in the question and answer, and that's fine as well. In one of those sections, if you can't find where to type in under chat or questions, you just tab on the little arrow next to it. And if the arrow is facing right, then it's hiding that the area to type in. So if you click on the right hand or the arrow, and it'll open up where you can type. It would be wonderful if you could take a moment or two while we're introducing ourselves to type in your name, the name of your organization and your role within the organization. Again, you can do that in questions and answers, or you can do that in chat. We'll look in both places for that information. Much appreciated. I see some folks typing in already, so I appreciate that. I'll introduce myself. I'm Jennifer Jeffery Pearsall. I am with Shepherd Pratt and the Mid-Atlantic APBS network for supporting positive behavior support in the broader Mid-Atlantic region. I am one of the partners that was brought in here within the state. So I'm located within Maryland and have been involved with the implementation of positive behavior support for the past 21 years, whether it be in schools, in alternative settings for youth, for instance, residential programming, juvenile justice, as well as adult supporting organizations like yourselves. And so I'm going to turn this over to Meg DiPasquale to introduce herself.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here this morning to hear a little bit more about positive behavior supports and how to get involved with potentially the next cohort or their following. This is an initiative that, as some of you may know, we have been working on since 2018. Actually, it started way before 2018, but since I've been on board, we've really been pushing to get this up and moving to really be able to have agencies understand more about positive behavior supports and how it can be utilized within a provider agency for everybody that you work with, as well as those individuals that have those challenging behaviors. As you know, I've been with the state since 2018. We started with one cohort, and then we had COVID hit, and so we are very much aware that everybody is still dealing with COVID and the repercussions of this pandemic and how it's affected not only the individuals that we serve, but your staff as well, and some of the challenges that all the agencies are having. And so we really do appreciate you being here today to hear more and potentially see if this is something that you would like to try out over the next year or so. I would hope that you all recognize that we want this to succeed, so we're really willing to work with individuals that are interested in doing this but may have questions. That's what today's webinar is all about. So please ask questions. We really want this to be as lively a discussion as possible as after Jen is done going through her presentation. So again, thank you so much for being here.
Excellent, thanks, Meg. And then Clarence, are you on the call this morning? I think I saw your name on there. I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself as well. All right, Terrence, if you are, feel free to interrupt me at any point if you're able to get to audio. I know sometimes connections can be challenging. So, all right, so thanks. And Meg, thanks for providing that context. We're gonna just do a brief overview of positive behavior support. If you were in the webinar in September, there's a lot of repeat information on here, just on a kind of a bigger idea, global perspective. If you weren't in attendance during that September webinar, what I'm providing is a very brief overview, and it probably would be helpful if you're interested to go back and view that video so that you have additional detail about what we're talking about today. But this is just to orient us to the big ideas of positive behavior support and reminding folks that about the different tiers and kind of the mechanics behind this. And the kind of the overarching vision and goal of positive behavior support is to promote the respectful delivery of practices that support the dignity of individuals. And when I go through this, I want you to keep in mind, and we're very much aware of the impact of COVID and the pandemic on the daily functioning and operating procedures of an organization. And I want you to think about positive behavior support and as something that you can lean into or pull from to really help promote some resiliency and some building in of strategies that can help you through this kind of broader recovery phase that we're in. And so when we talk about positive behavior support, we're talking about an approach to how we organize ourselves around providing practices, supports to individuals that are promote dignity, that there also is a progression, that we have kind of those lower level interventions and practices that we engage with all people that we support, up to understanding that there are a variety of needs and complexity of needs, and having assessment and interventions that will allow us to kind of differentiate our support according to the needs of the people that we support. We pull from validated strategies, and so you'll see that there are opportunities for alignment of work with other practices or priorities that you have within your organization that really are trying to achieve a similar goal. And we also think about this as a systems-wide approach, and thinking about how we can think about positive behavior support across a continuum. So when I talk about the continuum, what we do is we often think about PBIS in terms of individualized supports, and that's what where our heads typically go. And when we talk about the work that we do with cohorts here in Maryland, we're going to start with the base, the tier one, what we do with all people that we support across the organization. And it's the people that we support, but also what do we do with all staff? How do we support all staff with a core set of strategies that can really help promote those positive social interactions and create a culture and climate that it helps promote quality of life for both the people that are supported as well as the staff within your organization. And I'm sure we have a range of organizations on the call as far as size and mission. And so I want you to think about this regardless of your size and mission. This is a very flexible framework that can be applied across the board and contextualized in what this looks like. But we take this tiered approach when we think about positive behavior support. So we'll start with a cohort and we'll emphasize the tier one, or what we do with all people, and then move up into looking at more of those advanced tiers of how do we identify folks that need some additional support. And then what do we do with the few individuals that we support that need our most complex supports, and how do we apply that positive behavior support principles to develop that individualized positive behavior support plan. And so, through this partnership and becoming a cohort, we start with that tier one, and I'll talk to you about what that looks like specifically in a minute. And we progress the supports with our cohorts into tier two and tier three. And that's where we are moving this year with our first cohort. That was a bit delayed because of COVID, but that's where the next cohort will move after about a year or so with focusing on tier one. When we think about tier one, there are some specific practices of what this looks like. Again, there's more detail in the September webinar of screenshots of what these different components look like, but I'm going to give you just a narrative overview. What we work with the cohort, and what cohort 2 will be working on first, is thinking about the foundation of their supports, and thinking about how to identify predictable and positive settings through the identification of common language or values and routines, and coming to agreement and having the people that we support guide that process of what the routines and the values are for the settings that either they work in or they live in. or even extension and community-based settings. We have plans for teaching and prompting those social behaviors, those pro-social positive behaviors and interaction. And then we have acknowledgement and recognition procedures in place so that we're really promoting those positive social interactions and increasing those positive interactions that staff have with people that we support. And we also recognize staff through this process. We engage in procedures to think about how you respond to challenging behaviors through a function-based perspective, thinking about the why and focusing on empathy when responding, with that goal of that de-escalation lens on when responding to challenging situations. And we're talking about a team-based approach that really uses data to guide the decision-making process. The foundation for this and how teams organize around determining who needs whose needs different levels of support is anchored around this decision-making logic here. And what we work with teams around are identifying the data sources that will give an indication of what the needs are, whether it's across the organization or if it's in a specific program or a home or with specific individuals. The data will help guide that process that indicates where those needs are and where we need to be putting in supports. And once we understand what what the outcome is that you're achieving that's based on your data, then you select practices to help achieve those outcomes. And what we'll talk about with Tier 1 are a set of core practices for Tier 1, or what we do with all. And when you put those practices in place, we then need to be thinking about the systems or how we support staff behavior to make sure those practices are put into place with fidelity, and to make sure that we're putting things in place that are necessary to support staff. So we spend a lot of time during training events and follow-up meetings to provide support to organizations that promote the systems thinking. What does your teaming structure look like? How are you making decisions through that team using data to identify what your needs are, where you want to be moving as far as your outcomes? How are you providing training and coaching or performance feedback to staff when you're asking them to do a new practice? So if it's at Tier 1 and we're asking staff to increase their praise, then how are you training staff, and how are you providing feedback so that we know that they're so they feel like they're supported in that skill? And then also around collecting some fidelity data and evaluating outcomes. I had mentioned before, thinking about how, when we talk about validated practices, that we want to be thinking about this element of alignment with existing person-centered priorities. And so that's also a large component of the conversation that we have during training and in follow-up meetings, is talking about what is it that you already have that's working, what is it that you already have that is aligned with the vision and mission of your organization, and how can we incorporate all of this so that we're working in an aligned way, and balancing those important to and important for elements when supporting people. And feel free, as I'm also talking here, to put any questions into the question box or into the chat as well, okay? And if you haven't done so already, if you can type in your name and your organization name and your role within the organization, that would be fantastic. Appreciate it. Whoops. Scrolling around chat, and then I just moved that around. So when I talk about that alignment element, here are some approaches that might come to mind that are person-centered priorities that would align well with positive behavior support. All right. That was some big ideas and reminders of what positive behavior support is, what the focus of the work is with our cohorts, especially the first year or two that we're working with cohorts and adopting an organization-wide positive behavior support that really fits with your organization. So you're likely here because you're interested or you're determining what your interest level is to become part of Cohort 2. And we're really excited to have so many folks involved today with this and learning more. And we're really excited to be bringing on a second cohort. It was delayed a bit because of the pandemic, and we're excited to be able to move forward at this time. When we talk about Cohort 2, some considerations I think for you all are to know what is expected and determine your interest and buy-in for this work. And if there's interest and buy-in based on understanding what's expected, then we would strongly encourage you to apply for Cohort 2. So we'll talk to you today about some of the considerations that would help you make an informed choice about whether to apply. When we talk about organization-wide positive behavior support for Cohort 2, we're looking to bring on up to 8 organizations, and we're hoping for representation across the state. We're looking for organizations that can show commitment from organization leadership, and also commitment to engage in training, technical assistance, and evaluation with Maryland DDA and partners, and understanding that this is a multi-year commitment. I'm going to go into a little bit of this in more detail, and Meg and Terrence, feel free to jump in if there's anything that you want to add to any of the topics that we're talking about when it comes to what's involved in this work. We will be sharing with you the application as well as a readiness checklist, and that will come out following this webinar. But I'm going to share with you a screenshot of the readiness checklist, just so you know that there is a roadmap, if you will, or the things that we're talking about today are articulated into a readiness checklist that can help you all when you assess your readiness and your interest in becoming involved. And we'll share this along with the application following the webinar. What we're looking for, and I'm kind of walking you through the readiness components right now, is that the organization has a priority to invest in positive behavior supports. And so that comes from leadership. And so we're looking for leadership within the organization to indicate that, positive behavior supports, especially organization-wide positive behavior supports, is a priority for the organization. We're looking for commitment from administrators, and meaning that there is a role for administrators in this process. And the reason that we want organization leadership to have a role within this process is because we know that when leadership at the top level, the organization level, is involved, that really sets the tone for the priority for the work. We do know that when leaders are actively involved, there is a greater uptick of the priority or the intervention. There's usually associated with a higher level of implementation as well. So we know that the role of the leader is really important, as well as other members within the organization. So we're looking for organization leadership to understand and prioritize and give an indication that there's going to provide time for the organization team to meet, that the leadership will attend team trainings and meet with external consultants and trainers when there are opportunities for meetings with us to be able to help provide feedback in order with that growth mindset in mind. All right. And that there's also a priority for training and support to be provided internally in order to build capacity within your organization with these skills and strategies that are learned. What we're really looking at here for the administrator as far as time commitment within this first year is an estimated 27 hours per person, plus time spent at any ongoing team meetings that you have within your organization. We're asking teams to meet in between trainings and ongoing to keep this work flowing. And so that's an estimated number of hours per leader to engage in some readiness webinars and some training, and I'll share that with you in a few minutes. We're also looking that you have identified or are willing to identify a leadership team to organize this work and to make sure that there's a representation of voice across your organization on that team. Because as much as organization leadership kind of sets the tone and is really influential in having innovations sustain over time or be implemented really well, we also know that you're going to have a real high quality implementation when you get voice from a range of folks within your organization. And so we're asking folks who are interested in organizations that are interested in applying to become part of organization-wide PBS in Maryland to identify a team. This can be an existing team. We're not saying that you have to add a new team into this process, but it could definitely be an existing team that you can anchor this work into. And so that team will attend a training, 3 days of training, and then meet after that or in between trainings to keep this work running. So for the first year, the time commitment per team member is estimated 24 hours per person, because that includes 3 days of training. And then the meeting times afterwards. So if it's a monthly meeting, then it would be time at monthly meetings for these team members. So the first year includes those 3 days of training. We also ask that teams, or that organizations rather, identify a point of contact, or maybe even up to 3 points of contact, but one is sufficient to be the main point of contact between Maryland DDA and partners and the organization. So the individual that we reach out to talk about training dates or setting up meetings, or just even checking in to see if there's any support that the team would like to request between trainings and after trainings. The point of contact will attend team meetings with the organization. They'll attend any kind of training and technical assistance. And then we also like to provide some additional webinars for these points of contact throughout the year as part of a professional learning community to pull all the points of contact together. So you have other folks within the state to talk to who are in a similar position of implementation of positive behavior support. And so what we're looking at here is an estimated 33 hours per person or per point of contact, in addition to the ongoing team meetings. And the hours are a little bit more here because we add those additional webinars for follow-up for that professional learning contact. And again, that's, or professional learning community. And again, that's across the year. And then finally, we're looking at identifying over time what would be considered PBS or facilitators. This is something that we work with organizations with when we first get involved, and as we start building, as you start building out positive behavior support. But it's really identifying folks within the organization, and we aim to do this within the first year of implementation, who can really build the expertise to be able to train and support positive behavior support within your organization. And that would be across the tiers. And so we have more conversations about that during the first year. It would be great to have those folks involved as early as possible. And if they are involved from the beginning of the training, then that would also be a 33-hour per person commitment during the first year, as well as attending additional meetings. All right. When I talk about those 33 hours or the 27 hours, depending on the role, whether it's a team member, an administrator, a point of contact, there's slight variations in those. And that's because that we're talking about some webinars that a few folks should attend. we're talking about team trainings that the whole team should attend, and then the follow-up meetings with the points of contact. So we have, once organizations apply for involvement with positive behavior support as cohort 2, the organizations that are selected to become involved we'll ask them to attend some planning webinars prior to the training. And that's really to come together to talk about some things, some readiness elements. There are 2 1.5-hour planning webinars. We're asking that the organization leadership and the point of contact attend those webinars. That isn't a full team training. It's just a few folks. It could be like 2 to 5 individuals, depending on the number of points of contact and leadership, a number of organization leaders you have involved with this. And the purpose here is for us to give some input on your leadership team composition and provide any feedback on who you've identified. Oftentimes we'll maybe give some feedback on, consider adding this role to that team. It could be a direct support professional. It could be, how could your QA person come and be part of this team? We might give that kind of feedback. And then we engage you in some pre-planning activities around alignment. So getting to know all of the priorities that you have in your organization prior to coming to a team training, so we can then have a deeper conversation about that during team training, as well as evaluation, getting to know the data that you already collect, so that when we do talk about evaluation for positive behavior support, that we've already had that, we have a little bit of information going into that. So after the planning webinars, we move into team training, and there is space between the planning webinars and the team training. So if you want to reorganize the team or rethink who you want to come to the team training, there's time to do that. We do deliver our training in 3 full days. The goal will be in person if all things go well. And the first 2 days are the foundations of positive behavior support, as well as the different features or what it looks like at tier 1. And then day 3 is evaluation. The team or the training is attended by the full team, including leadership and the point of contact. And then between the trainings, there's typically a time and space between the first 2 days and then the 3rd day. And then afterwards, we have some technical assistance that we like to provide to organizations. We like to provide 2 to 3 on-site meetings with the partners and consultants as part of an evaluation process, but it's really to inform your action planning. We do a learning walk and meet with organization leadership to talk about what's going well with the initial planning and implementation and how we can support your process. We also like to do cohort 2 organization webinars as that professional learning in the community. And we've had some great success with that with cohort 1, where there are organizations who had an opportunity to connect during these webinars, who are now connecting on their own to learn from each other and brainstorm about how they can share ideas between themselves to bolster their implementation. And then we also provide technical assistance as needed. It could be attending team meetings if you want some input. If you're doing some planning and want some input, it could be product reviews, email, online support, etc. And then we also have an evaluation component to this work. So when we talk about getting involved with cohorts, we talk about getting you all ready for this work and providing the training and technical assistance. And we also want to engage in an evaluation component of this work, where there is some data sharing, but there's also a huge component of us being able to provide you with feedback to help with your action planning. And that's through those learning walks that I mentioned. We typically use the tiered fidelity inventory, which is a measure that takes you through all of the essential features of positive behavior support at tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. And we'll focus on tier 1 and at first, and it really helps us identify feedback and give you really targeted feedback that you can then use to prioritize an action plan around. So I want the big take-home message about the evaluation for you all to be that the purpose of this the primary purpose is to provide information to help you grow in this area and action plan and prioritize. We also like to set you up in a way that will help you kind of track your story with implementation and the work that you've put into this, the effort that you put into it. It could be the team meetings, it could be trainings that you do within your organization. The fidelity is what I was just talking about with the implementation walks, but then also the impact. You know, if we can identify early on in the process the goals that you want to achieve out of this work, then you're set up from the beginning to start monitoring that and showing your success and making decisions based on the data that you're collecting. As such, this process is approximately a 3 to 5 year commitment because lasting change takes time. And so we're asking that organizations that are interested in becoming involved with organization-wide PBI or PBS are interested in a relationship and a partnership with Maryland DDA for at least 3 to 5 years. And in a lot of states, that partnership is ongoing in different ways, and it looks different after those 3 to 5 years, and kind of it continues. But we're asking for a 3 to 5 year commitment for those who are interested in applying. So in summary, to kind of thumbnail sketch this into 2 buckets, what the DDA is providing is training to organization leadership teams, as well as access to consultants to help build out your positive behavior support approaches within your organization through ongoing training opportunities with your cohort. And we would like to also have opportunities to cross-communicate with cohorts so that cohorts that have come before you, which would be cohort 1, have an opportunity to share their experiences with you, and again, developing out that statewide network. We also provide support for evaluation to help build out that evaluation process over the first few years, and making sure that you have any access to the most recent up-to-date information in the field for positive behavior support in organizations. What we're asking that organizations need to commit to is what I just talked about. That's active administrative leadership and involvement through this process, that the organization leadership team is available to coordinate positive behavior support efforts. We also ask that you complete all aspects of the application to indicate interest, and those organizations that are selected then engage in the activities that that we're asking cohort to engage in, which are those readiness webinars, training events, and ongoing technical assistance around implementation and evaluation. So in order to apply, review the application, and we will be disseminating the application after the webinar, and within the application is the readiness guidelines, and it really outlines what I just talked about today. You would need, in order to apply, you're going to be asked to identify and list out your organization leaders, as well as the leadership team, the members that you're identifying, at least for the application, to become trained in positive behavior support and help plan out what positive behavior support looks like across your organization, as well as your point of contact or points of contact. So you'll be asked to identify those individuals within your organization and the roles that those people have within your organization already. I will put a little disclaimer in here about the leadership team. If you list folks in your leadership team for the application and you become part of cohort 2 and you go to a readiness webinar and decide that you want to make some changes to that based on feedback and discussions that we have, that's fine. And then we ask that you complete and submit the application by 11:59 p.m. on December 10th. Again, we're going to work on getting that application out to everyone, as well as a readiness checklist. We will have a follow-up support webinar for applications specifically. So once you get access to the application and you start going through the information and have additional questions on how to complete it or what information is necessary, we'll have an open session essentially for questions and answers around the application. The applications are due again on December 10th, and we will be announcing teams and notifying teams by January 31st. All of the activities as far as readiness webinars, training dates, etc., will occur robustly between April and July, starting in the spring of this next year. All right, so that gives you an overall guideline, kind of an idea of when these events might take place. I'm going to open it for questions. I wanted to leave a lot of time for questions, so folks have an opportunity to unmute. You can, I think you can raise your hand or ask questions along the way. And so I wanted to open it up for questions here. So feel free to type in chats or unmute.
Hey, Jennifer, I'm going to unmute everyone. So if you're not on mute, you might want to self-mute and then to eliminate some distracting sounds.
Perfect.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have a quick question for you.
Yes.
I work for a very high intense organization in which individuals, practically 60, maybe 50% come from the Sept program or delinquent backgrounds or highly intense, in other words, very behavioral. And yet I have quite a few homes where I don't have any behaviors. I'm just so mild that redirection helps, and prompting, we get things done.
Mm-hmm. I think you might have cut out. Oh. All right, I think you cut out through part of your question or comment. So I'm gonna answer it in a way that I think I'll answer it in two ways. And one is what I'm hearing is a lot of complex needs. Yes. And this work is, it's really helpful in setting that a strong foundation so that staff are really equipped with some concrete skills to be able to have a good kind of baseline foundation for supporting individuals that would also have likely individualized plans. The other component I think that I heard too is that you do have some homes where there's kind of like a lack of challenging behavior or unexpected behaviors, and that's a good thing. And I would encourage organizations, and that comes up sometimes, well, we don't really have challenging behaviors, and positive behavior support can be very helpful in that situation as well, as far as ensuring that you have those essential features in place in a really secure and robust way, so that you can maintain low levels of challenging behavior in those settings or across your organization. And it speaks to the continuum of support aspect of this framework or this approach, that yes, you can do things for all, and based on the intensity of need for the people in an environment or a home or a work environment or what have you. What you do for all individuals that have more complex needs might be more intensified than what you do in a home where you have individuals with less complex needs. So that's the beauty about this, is it can be really contextualized to your organization's needs and within your organization across programs.
Okay, great. Okay. Alrighty. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So we had a great question here. Melanie, are those 27 hours per week, per month, or over the length of the cohort? The hours that were quoted within the slides here, and there will also be a table within the application, are across the first year. That includes the webinar, the pre-planning webinars or the training events, and then any kind of follow-up meetings you have would be in addition to that. So that's 27 hours across about a year. And thank you for asking that. There's a big difference between whether it's a week, a year, you know, so I really appreciate that question. Thank you.
And just to jump in about the hours, like Jen had said, you know, we really would like to do some of these trainings in person, just simply because, you know, having a didactic environment makes it a little bit easier to learn and absorb the information and be able to gain support from the other agencies that are also working with you. However, keeping in mind everything that's going on, you know, we will, excuse me, do these via Zoom or GoToWebinar, remote, virtual, as need be. But if we can get a in-person group, that would be our first preference. But know that, you know, it very well may be that a lot of this time will be done virtually. So that also kind of saves on drive time and things like that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I can answer. There's a question about, is there financial support for agencies that participate? And no, this is a voluntary directive. You do not have to participate in it, and DDA will not be providing any financial support for this. Will it stop being voluntary at some point? Very good question. Right now, at this point, you know, the Deputy Secretary isn't forcing this on anybody. Will it stop being voluntary at some point? I would have to, for this cohort, to do the organizational-wide supports. I don't think it will stop being voluntary, in the sense that, as Jen said, we are currently only looking to bring in 8 organizations at a time, and it's a 3 to 5 year commitment. So as we move forward, you know, another 8, another 8, another 8. I mean, it would take forever. You know, if we made this a mandatory thing, it would take a long time to get everybody to do it. And the reason why we keep it to the 8 agencies, and if there's anybody from the first cohort on this call, and I think I might have seen 1 or 2 people, we really do give a lot of one-to-one individualized assistance between Jen and myself, and now with me having Terrence as my statewide coordinator, he will be also providing that one-to-one assistance as well, where we go in and, you know, we'll come to your agency and sit and talk with you. We'll do learning walks and walk through where you're inputting, trying to implement the PBS. So we wouldn't be able to make it a mandatory thing, because we don't really have the capacity to provide that level of individualized support to everybody all at once. And you know, there's that old adage, a job worth doing is worth doing right. And so, you know, I want to make sure that the agencies are feeling supported by the clinical department, by myself, by DDA, by Jen, in this project, because some of the thought process, although you're doing already a lot of what we're asking, sometimes it's looking at that information in a different way, and that sometimes can be difficult. So we want to provide as much support as possible. So that will take time. So no, I don't. I don't see it being a mandatory. The organizational wide implementation of PBS is not going to be mandatory at this point. Now, teaching PBS to your DSPs, you know, that's something that we are working on an online platform for, just to provide that basic information. But for this specific pilot, it will not be mandatory. So the question that was asked about your son is in self-directed services, you will need to speak with your regional office and the or your support broker in regards to accessing positive behavior supports. So positive behavior supports is supposed to be utilized in writing a behavior plan. So if your son has a behavior plan, they should be putting some of those interventions into place in the way that they do the tiers of intervention. ABA is not something that DDA pays for. That applied behavior analysis is not paid for through the waiver. So my recommendation would be that you reach out to your regional office and talk to the self-direction department, as well as your support broker, to get some more specific questions. Can I request a handout of the for after the class? Jen, can we send out the PowerPoint?
Yeah, the PowerPoint's done. Are they posted somewhere?
We don't have the current one here, but if I can upload it if I can get a emailed copy.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I thought I emailed that to you.
Oh, let me go check.
If not, I can email it too. I have your handouts, Jen.
No, I think oh, no. Yep, there we go, Donna. My apologies on that. I thought I sent that to Donna this morning, and I just went to check my email, and it was still
sitting there. Mm-hmm.
It was still sitting there, slides. So I just sent that, and so we can have those posted if it. Perfect. Yep. So yeah, we'll have those slides likely posted soon. They should come through to Donna in a few minutes. And then we'll also have, we can also provide the slides and maybe the links to these recordings when we send out the application as well.
Right.
So that you have everything in one, even that, so you have everything in one space, even the September slides.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Right.
it's uploaded.
What other questions? Oh, perfect. Thank you. So you'll see in handouts that there's a handout screen, or not screen, but tab on your control panel that was activated. So the slides are listed there for you. The nice thing too is that you'll have time to, there's time between now and when the applications are due to be able to kind of think through this, think about questions that you might have. I will also put in here Meg and Terrence's information for any follow-up questions that you might have after this, because it's also often helpful to digest information and kind of think about it. And that's when the questions start coming up. We'll also have, in addition to being able to reach out with specific questions, we'll have a support webinar on November 4th that is really focused on the application process. And you can certainly come and ask specific questions about what the requirements are, commitments are, et cetera. If you're still thinking about applying, if you're in the process of applying and you have questions about the application itself, we can certainly answer questions at that point. It'll be much more of just an open Q&A session than a lot of information. All right. And then the last thing I'll share with you is that there are in your slides as well, there's information if you want more information about positive behavior support. We have the Association of Positive Behavior Support, which is our international association on PBS that has just a great range of resources to learning more about positive behavior support. I've highlighted in the community here, which would be kind of the avenue that you all could tap into, but there are other applications as well. And then when Rachel Freeman from Minnesota was with us last month, we shared information from Minnesota's positive behavior support, where there are example modules and examples of agencies as well. So there are those examples that you can access. All right, Meg, I see one more question in here. Does an agency have to be licensed for behavioral services to apply?
No, because this isn't really about doing a behavior plan. So as Jen was talking, this is a organizational wide implementation. So it's really about especially the very first year or so, it's really about tier 1, which is those interventions that we want to put into place for everybody. So it's not, it's not looking at a behavior plan. It's looking at areas that everybody feels it should be the valued areas that they want to focus on, whether it be respect, communication, etc., and how to enhance that. So you don't have to be a licensed behavior supports to be able to do this. And
Great.
hopefully, hopefully, if you guys start doing this and it really gets it ingrained into your DSPs and your executive leaders, and maybe some of the behaviors that you're seeing will decrease, and you won't need to request a behavior plan for somebody. That's ultimately that would be really awesome to see. So
yeah, and that's what we like to see, and that's one that when you think about evaluation, that's one thing that some organizations look at, are the number of people that need those individualized support plans, and over time, does that decrease as we build a stronger foundation of support across the organization?
Right.
Right. Well, that is the content that we have for today. I am happy to stay on and just field questions as they come up, as you're thinking about questions, and continue to put them into in the question box. But I also know that time is valuable. So if you don't have any questions at this moment, that's all the content that we do have for today. I appreciate your time coming here, and I'm looking forward to seeing the organizations that apply and really getting in there and getting involved with the second cohort. This is really exciting work.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see who applies. And like I said, the agencies that were doing it before the pandemic, and are still doing it now, if you reach out to them, they can give you their their perspective of the work that they've done with myself and with Jen. And we're really looking forward to seeing who we're going to get to work with next year. So thank you all for attending. If you have more questions, we'll stay on the line for a little while. If not, the application and the readiness checklist will be going out shortly, and we will be talking again soon. So have a great rest of your day.